Welcome to the second episode of the chapter 2 of our diesel engines course. In this episode, we are going to talk about gaskets. How important are the gaskets in a diesel engine? Not only in a diesel engine, in gas, in diesel, in transmissions, in any type of equipment with the fluid internally, you need gaskets in order to avoid leaks, in order to seal hermetic. Let me talk about three important elements that we are going to use in the future when you repair diesel engines. We are going to use the service manual that you have on the screen right now. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important manuals that we are going to check every day. The service manual have all the information related with the reparations, with the procedure to do the reparation. In the service manual, you found it in the first page, the technical specification of the engine, the technical information of the engine, and you found it the parameters, the torques appropriated per each bolt, the type of gaskets, the capacity of the engine in gallons of oil, the capacity of the engine in coolant, the type of oil recommended, the type of coolant recommended, the capacity of the battery in cold cranking arms, the voltage of the battery, the type of refrigerant recommended on the engine. The same with the transmission, the type of oil recommended for the transmission, the type of filters, oil filters, fuel filters, air filters. All of this information is in the service manual. And we are going to use the service manual every day. If you don't have the service manual, don't try to repair the engine. If you don't have the service manual, don't try to disassemble any part of the engine. Don't try to touch the engine if you don't have the service manual. The service manual is mandatory. Other manual is the operational manual or operation manual. This is very important when you install the engine in the boat. In the operation manual is the procedure, the parameters, the recommendations about where should be located the engine, about the inclination, about the motor mounts, about the exhaust pipes, about the anti-siphons. Those parameters are located in the operational manual. And also you found a lot of information about the troubleshoot. The service manual and the operation manual are critical in our procedure to repair and install diesel engines in a boat. And other manual that is very important, the number 3, is the parts manual. Like the name said, is the manual where all the parts are located with part number. This is the complement of the two previous manuals. The parts manual is very important to order the appropriate part, exactly the part according with the serial number of the engine and according with the model of the engine and according with the family engine. Depending on the manufacturer, some manufacturers only use the service, only use the model of the engine and the serial number. And other manufacturers, they include additionally the family name, like a reference when you try to select parts. The parts manual is very important. Let me give to you an example. Suppose that you are doing a big reparation in a boat in Virgin Islands. in the Caribbean. And you need order the parts by phone, by internet. And suppose that you order the parts, the wrong parts, and you are in the boat in Virgin Islands 3 days, 4 days, 1 week, waiting for the elements, for the parts, and you receive the wrong parts. Now you need wait other week or 2 weeks to replace those parts. Why? Because you order the parts wrong. Because you order the parts and you don't have the parts number appropriated. This is critical. I have experience with that. Never try to repair an engine if you don't have minimum the service manual and the parts number manual. And never try to install an engine if you don't have the operation manual. Alright? The operation manual is critical when you install an engine in the boat, or when you remove the engine in the boat. The service manual is critical for the procedures to repair the head, the procedure to replace the pump, the procedures, and the parts number to select the appropriate parts. Alright, this is very important because one of the parts that we are going to talk in this video is about the gaskets. Another important recommendation that I want to explain to you is use always original gaskets. Never try to replace the gaskets for aftermarket gaskets. In this business, in the marine business, the time is critical. For that reason, be careful. For example, suppose that you replace the head gasket for an aftermarket head gasket. And you finish the job, the engine starts properly, the temperature is okay, the customer is happy, the customer goes with the boat to other place, other country, and in 2 weeks the customer calls to you because have a low compression or high temperature. You visit the boat and you found it that the problem is the gasket. The gasket was inappropriate, and right now the engine have problems of temperature. Right now you need remove the head again and replace the head gasket, but this is warranty, and this is your time, this is your money. This is not good. For that reason, use always original parts, specific with the gaskets, original gaskets. Be careful with the aftermarket gaskets because the material looks similar, but the material is not exactly the same. The material externally looks similar. The color of the gasket looks similar, but the quality of the material is not the same. Yeah, I have a lot of experience with bearings and gaskets aftermarket. Believe me, in a couple of months you need to replace the bearings, replace the gasket again because the quality is not the same. If the quality is not the same, the oil or the fluid internally deteriorate the gasket, and soon or later you have a leak. For that reason, use original gaskets. And read the manual when you replace the gasket, because there are gaskets that they don't require additional silicone, or they don't require additional sealant. In other words, the gasket should be replaced, should be placed on the engine without any additional grease or silicone or additive. If you added those silicones, you introduce another problem. I'm going to explain later the typical consequence when you use the gaskets and additionally silicone. This is not good, it's not recommended. Follow the manufacturer recommendations and always use original material, original gaskets. I'm going to explain later. In some cases, you need to fabricate the gasket. You can fabricate the gasket if you have the material according with the recommendation of the manufacturer. Alright, this is the theory related with gaskets, and we are going to try to check a simple definition of gaskets. What is the meaning of gasket? A gasket is a mechanical seal which fills the space in between two or more surfaces, generally to prevent leaks from into the jointed objects while they are under high compressions. Yes, the gaskets are designed to avoid leaks and to seal the contact in between two components. Gaskets are commonly produced by cutting from sheet material like gasket paper, rubber, silicone, metal, cork, or neoprene. There are different materials used for gaskets, and always, if you want to replace the gasket for other one, try to replace the original or try to buy the material exactly with the same specification than the original. Let me try to refresh how many gaskets I have in a typical diesel engine. We are going to try to refresh. What is the most important gasket? Yes, the head gasket. Yeah, the head gasket. This is one of the most important gaskets. Other, the valve cover gasket. Other, the oil pan gasket. Other, the timing cover gasket. Other gasket, important gasket or seal. Yes, the front crankshaft seal and the back crankshaft seal. Critical seals. Other important gasket, yes, the fuel pump gasket, the thermostat housing gasket, the intake manifold gasket, the exhaust manifold gasket. Yeah, there are like 40 or 50 gaskets involved in the reparation of a typical engine, and you need to be familiarized with the shape of those gaskets, because the shape is pretty similar between different manufacturers, and the color of the gaskets is very similar. Yeah, I recommend that you be familiarized with the material, touch with your hand those gaskets and the color, because you need to identify for simple visual inspection. Oh, this is the gasket of the valve cover, this is the gasket of the exhaust manifold, this is the gasket of the oil pan, because with the material you know where should be located that gasket. And we are going to check each of those gaskets, the material and the location. Alright, the materials, typical materials used to fabricate gaskets. Cork. Cork is a special gasket, a special material. Normally the valve cover gasket is fabricated in cork. Some years ago the oil pan gasket was fabricated in cork, but today was replaced for neoprene. Other material is nylon fiber and nylon. Yeah, there are a lot of gaskets fabricated in nylon. The intake manifold gasket is one of these. Is fabricated in nylon. Rubber, synthetic rubber. Yeah, for example, the timing cover. The timing cover is synthetic rubber. Asbestos. Yes. The turbocharger, the gasket that connects the exhaust manifold with the turbocharger, is in asbestos or metallic asbestos, both of them. Also the exhaust manifold gasket, in some cases is fabricated in asbestos. It's a sandwich. In the middle is stainless steel, covered in both sides for a layer of asbestos. Other copper. Copper is used to fabricate gaskets and O-rings. There are a lot of injectors that they have in the base of the injector where the nozzle is located, a copper O-ring. And there are head gaskets fabricated in copper. We are going to study later. Yes, those gaskets fabricated in copper are especially used in high compression engines, or engines that are supercharged or turbocharged, or engines for race, for high performance. They use copper gasket. The copper gaskets have some advantage in comparison with the regular gasket. We are going to talk right now about that. Other is steel, stainless steel. The exhaust manifold is very common in stainless steel, or the gasket of the turbo also is fabricated in stainless steel. or corrugated steel also for turbo and exhaust manifolds. Yeah, there are different type of materials. The idea is try to use exactly the same material in order to replace the gasket. Installation of the gasket, some recommendations related with the installation of the gasket. The most important part when you try to replace a gasket is clean. Try to keep the areas where the gasket should be replaced clean, completely clean. How can you clean? There are different materials. Be careful. Protect around of the area with the blue tape or with the racks in order to protect other components. But a clean mineral spirit is an excellent complement to clean. In some cases you need razor blades to clean the surface, and you need the wire wheel to remove all gaskets. The wire wheel is important. In some cases you need to remove the old gasket, and with the blade is not enough, with the mineral spirit is not enough, probably you need the wire wheel. Alright, and clean the area. The required compression for your gasket material depends on different factors. The area, the surface of the area, the pressure, the torque that we are going to apply in between the parts, the size of the bolts, the number of bolts, the condition of the bolts, and the lubrication of the bolts. In general terms, I recommend in marine applications, when you replace a part, try to replace the bolt. One perfect example is the head of the engine. When you replace the head, the recommendation is replace the head bolts for new head bolts. Oh, Mr. Lopez, but the bolts lose like new ones in good condition. Of course, they lose in good condition. How many years was the head of that engine on place? Oh, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years. 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, those bolts extended because they was working under tension. The length of those bolts right now is exactly the same length than the original length? Probably not, because those bolts were extended for 10 years. Right now they are a little longer. What happens if you put the head, you replace the head gasket, and you try to torque according with the manufacturer recommendations? The torque is appropriated with the old bolt? No, because the old bolts are a little longer, and when you apply the torque, probably you apply less torque. For that reason, the recommendation is always replace the bolts. Other important recommendation: the original bolts are metric, and right now it's impossible to find those bolts in metric thread, in metric measurements. There are similar bolts in standard. Can I replace in the head? There are 12 bolts. Can I replace 6 standard and 6 metric? No. The recommendation is if you replace all of them. If you replace the standard for metric, I recommend try to pass the tap again in order to rectify the thread. No, but I am using pretty similar threads in between standard and metric. You remember in our book of intro what threads are similar? What grade are similar? I am using a similar grade. Yes, it's similar, but it's not the same. For that reason, I recommend with a tap, try to rectify the threads when you decide change from standard to metric or from metric to standard. This is very important. And never mix the bolts. All of them metric or all of them standard. This is very, very important. Alright, other important recommendation is about the installation of the gasket, clean the surface, and tight appropriated the gasket according with the manufacturer recommendations. In the chapter dedicated to the head and And we are going to disassemble the engine completely, and in each chapter I am going to explain the procedure to torque that specific part according with the manual. Alright, never reuse a gasket. Never, especially in marine application. Once again, it's no good idea that after 2 months the customer calls to you and you need with your money travel long distance to disassembly again and replace again with your money. Never reuse a gasket. Always use new gaskets, original gaskets. Alright, this is a bad idea. Try to reuse gaskets. When you storage the gaskets in a flat surface. Never put the gaskets vertical because the gaskets are bended. And after that, when you try to locate the gasket on place, the gasket don't fit properly. Alright, be careful with that. Keep the gasket in a plastic container with no humidity, with a normal ambient temperature. Avoid excess of humidity. Alright, and about the manifold gaskets, remember we have 2 manifolds. Intake manifold. The intake manifold is connected with the input of the turbo or with the throttle body, that's the input, and the exhaust manifold is connected with the exhaust pipe. Alright, in the exhaust manifold you have a special gasket that normally is stainless steel or stainless steel with asbestos. It's a special gasket because that manifold, the exhaust manifold, is working under higher temperatures. The intake manifold is a special rubber, is normally neoprene, and this is other critical gasket because if you have a leak in the intake manifold, you have problems with idle. You have problems when you try to reach the wide open throttle, and you have a code on the computer of the engine indicating that the intake, the suction at the input is not clear. Alright? For that reason, be careful with those manifold gaskets. Keep those gaskets flat, in a flat surface. Never use additional silicones when you install those gaskets. Those gaskets should be installed completely clean and completely dry, and you need to verify the surface before you install those gaskets. The intake manifold and the exhaust manifolds are critical gaskets, especially in marine application. For example, if you have a leak in the exhaust manifold of one of your engines, this is not good. In some cases catastrophic, because if you have a timing problem, probably in the output, in the exhaust gases, you have a spark, you have flames, and if you have a leak, you can produce an explosion in the engine room. And also, if you have a leak in the exhaust manifold, the temperature of the engine room past the limit, and you have all the sensors activated, and you have a shutdown of the engines. Be careful with that. I remember some years ago I have that situation. The customer complained that after 2 hours of operation, both engines stopped suddenly, and after that, when they tried to restart the engines no restart. And we found it that was because one of the exhaust manifolds in the starboard engine was broken, and the leak of exhaust gases increased the temperature of the engine room past the limit, and the fire buoy system shut down the engines for emergency. Right? Be careful with that. This is very important. That's the function of the second engineer or first engineer in mega yachts, is check the temperature of the engine room periodically, and check the odor, smell the engine room in order to identify if the odor is different, and try to be familiarized with the odors. You remember in other chapters I explained that situation. Alright, and those are the metallic gaskets that I explained before. Those are the typical gaskets used in exhaust manifold. This one is for exhaust manifold, this one for exhaust manifold. This is covered with asbestos, is a steel covered with asbestos. This is a steel, stainless steel, and this one is also stainless steel. This is connected in the exhaust pipe, in between the exhaust manifold and the exhaust pipe. All right, some gaskets, piping gaskets, and exhaust manifold gaskets are made of metal and with a sealing surface in order to provide a good seal. The metal by is like a spring. For that reason, never try to reuse an exhaust manifold gasket because that gasket was working under differential of temperature, dramatic differential of temperature for years and years. When you separate the exhaust manifold from the head, that gasket is bended, and if you try to reuse that gasket, 100% sure that you have leaks. All right. If you have leaks, you have a code in the computer is high exhaust gas temperature, and probably the engine shut down for high temperature. All right, my friends. The sealant. Can I replace the gasket for a special silicone for a special sealant? Probably, but it's not recommended. If the manufacturer recommend replace that gasket for a gasket, not for silicone, not for sealant, replace for a gasket or fabricate the gasket. All right. In diesel applications, I don't recommend replace the gasket for sealant. I recommend fabricate the gasket or try to buy the original gasket. It is usually desirable that the gasket be made from a material that is some degree yielding, such that is able to deform a little the space designated to fix it both parts. Alright, I don't recommend use sealant. I recommend use the original gasket always.